Dyer Productions present The Story Slot, traditional stories and fairy tales adapted by Jane Grandle. The story in this episode is The False Collar by Hans Christian Andersen.
There was once a fine gentleman who owned nothing but a shoehorn and a comb. But he had the finest false collars in the world, and it is one of these that our story is about. The collar was so old that it began to think about getting married. It just so happened that one day the collar was washed in company with a garter.
Well, I've never seen anything so slender and so fine, so soft and so neat. May I ask your name?
I shall not tell you.
Where do you live?
But the garter was so bashful and modest, she thought it was a strange question to answer.
I see that you are a fine garter. You are so pretty to look at, but I can tell that you're also very useful.
I will thank you not to speak to me uninvited.
But you are such a handsome garter, I couldn't help but want to speak to you.
Don't come near me. You look just like those men folks.
I am a fine gentleman. I have a shoehorn and a comb.
The collar boasted, even though it was really his master who owned the shoehorn and comb.
Please don't come so near to me. I'm not used to it.
You are a prude.
But just then the collar was taken out of the washtub. It was starched, hung over the back of a chair in the sunshine to dry, and then laid out on the ironing board. Then came the hot iron.
Dear iron, I feel quite hot. Oh, please, you will burn a hole in me. Oh, I offer you my hand.
But the iron just laughed and went proudly over the collar, for she liked pretending that she was a steam engine on the railway pulling carriages. The collar was a little jagged at the edge, so out came the long scissors to cut off the jagged part.
Oh, you are certainly a fine dancer, with good long legs like that. How well you stretch them out. It is the most graceful performance I have ever seen. Nobody can dance as well as you.
Thank you. I know it.
You ought to be a baroness. All that I have is a fine gentleman, a shoehorn, and a comb. If only I was a baron, then I could make you a baroness.
Do you seek my hand?
Collar had made the scissors angry, so without further ado, she cut him. And with that, she was gone. So the collar decided to ask the comb.
How well you keep your teeth, miss. Have you never thought of getting married?
Oh, yes, you can be sure of that. I am betrothed to the shoehorn.
The collar was very down. There was no other for him to court. A long, long time passed, and he ended up in a rag chest at a paper mill. There were many rags in the chest, all the fine ones together, and all the coarse ones by themselves. They all had much to say to each other to pass the time away. But the collar had the most, for he was such a boasting storyteller.
I have had so many sweethearts that I could hardly find a moment's peace. I was always an attractive, fine, starched-up gentleman. I had a shoehorn and a comb. You should have seen me then. I shall never forget my first love. She was a girdle, so fine, soft, and charming. She threw herself into a tub of water for my sake, you know. There was also a widow who became glowing hot, but I left her to grow cold again. There was also the top ballet dancer. She gave me this cut, you can see. She was so ferocious. My own comb was in love with me. She lost all her teeth from the heartache. Yes, I've seen much of that sort of thing, but I'm extremely sorry for the garter that went into the water tub. I have much on my conscience. So I want to become white paper.
But the collar came to be a very, very white piece of paper, on which this story is now printed. That is because he boasted so much of things that never really happened to him. We should all beware of telling stories that aren't true, for who knows, we might end up in a rag chest and be made into paper, and then have all our life story printed on it, even our most secret secrets, just like the false collar.
You've just heard the story of The False Collar. The collar was played by Jerry Kokich with additional voices by Jane Grandle. Jane also adapted the story, acting as narrator. The Story Slot was brought to you by Dyer Productions.